Welcome back to another edition of KARE 11 Sports Plus alongside Julia Daniels. I'm Reggie Wilson. I am not Nasir, despite what he said last week. You know, since we're identical twins and whatnot.
We'll see.
Yeah.
If the Wolves lose, then yeah, you are.
Yeah.
It's a whole other story. You have to watch last week's episode to understand.
Nasir did me dirty, man. You know, just making proclamations and then just bringing it all towards me, you know. You know, it's all good. We've moved on though, because that's last week's news. We're here to talk about this week's news. I really wish we had some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, nothing happened.
Yeah, so
nothing happened at all.
That's the show. See you guys later. No, so NFL free agency has been going bananas.
Yeah.
Since really like last week, really like when things kind of picked up. So the Vikings, they've been doing some stuff.
They said, Arby's, we have the beef.
Yes, let Kwesi cook.
At Arby's.
That too. So let's talk about some of these additions that they've brought in. We saw some of them just start to go official from the Vikings. We got the email making it all official, okay? They brought in offensive guard Will Fries, 5-year, $88 million deal. Center Ryan Kelly, 2-year, $18 million deal. Your Bama boy,
Jonathan Allen.
Defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, 3 years, $51 million. And this is going to become official soon. Javon Hargrave, 2-year, $30 million with $19 million guaranteed. So quite a bit of money. And they also signed Isaiah Rodgers, the cornerback from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, to a 2-year contract as well to try to help out that defensive back room. And they may not be done.
No, but the rumors are swirling, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah. So next segment, we're going to talk about who they could potentially bring in because they still have some more money to spend. Apparently, you know, Kwesi's the money guy.
They've spent the most.
Yeah, Rob Brzezinski, he's the money guy. They're just in the lab, just cooking it up, manipulating the dollars on the salary cap that went up this year.
Yeah.
So that's been exciting to see them spend all this money. They're leading the pack with all this money spent. What do you think of some of the additions so far?
I think I was telling you guys earlier about this. Vikings fans, the gist that I have gotten, obviously I'm not from here, but the gist I have gotten is there's two things that they wanted so badly. Better trenches and a quarterback they just bank on. And it looks like, as of right now, that's what it looks like. The trenches are, I think when I saw the numbers before Hargrave, they added 1,300 pounds to their lines.
That's a lot of beef.
Yeah, so this is exactly, I think, what Vikings fans wanted. This is what the Vikings needed. There was a lot of questions of, well, do you wait and draft somebody with your picks? But we discussed that you go into free agency and you try and solve your needs in free agency and then use the draft to kind of, who's the best person left on the board right now? And put yourself in that position headed into the draft instead of, because everything's up in the air at that point. This is where you really have the control, and this is what they needed. They needed this. I am not particularly surprised by the cornerback situation because I did think they needed some more depth, some more veteran depth there too. But right now, looks like all good things. Guys that are healthy have been healthy, which is also a good sign because they've had issues with that on the line too. So that's my thoughts.
So I thought it was interesting because after we saw Sam Darnold just take a beating the last 2 weeks.
Was it 11 sacks?
Yeah, he had 9 sacks against the Rams alone. And, you know, we saw Jared Verse doing the Superman, you know, jumping all over him. And that was just, it was a really bad scene. And you saw Kevin O'Connell get up there and speak as transparently as we've seen him in a while, saying we need to find a way to fortify the interiors of the offensive and defensive lines. And we saw, look, earlier last season, Brian Flores, scheme is crazy is what Brock Purdy told him. Stephon Diggs, hey, stop running zero. You know, that whole thing. But then once the league kind of figured out what they were doing, they were able to have a little bit of success. And we saw the Rams specifically and the Lions really be able to take advantage of the defense. And what is one thing that we saw that was pretty much kind of coming to a head in those last 2 games of the season? They couldn't get enough penetration on the inside to get home to the quarterback and make enough, negative plays on defense. And then also on offense, man,
no protection.
Right up the gut.
Yeah.
Right up the gut. Players are coming at Sam Darnold, and he's having to run for his life. And on defense, you're really relying on players to beat you outside.
Right.
Relying on the rush to get there. But if the rush doesn't get there and you've got no interior penetration, now you're like, okay, these DBs on the outside, they're going to have to win.
Right.
And look, they've had their shortcomings in the defensive backfield. Byron Murphy is a Pro Bowl player last season, and he did well leading the team in interceptions. But when you are not able to get into the trenches and really dominate, we saw.
Which is not something they've done in years.
No, especially under Kevin O'Connell. I think that was like a boiling point for him. He was like, look, we got to get this together. And they came into the offseason with a plan. And what I think was interesting is they decided to fortify those trenches and make sure that whoever is playing quarterback, I know we'll get to that.
Right.
Whoever is playing quarterback, they have an easier time. And the rush, if you got some guys who are getting inside penetration, that rush is going to get home even more, and they're going to cause even more havoc. And I think when you see how things ended in the last couple games of the season, now you see, okay, we're a team that wants to change things from the inside out.
And they've added versatile players too, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which Brian Flores loves that more than anything else, right? Because that's how he plays his game. So I think this has been, and obviously it'll be nice to have Christian Darrisaw back and healthy, and then they still have Brian O'Neill too. So the O-line, no one's played a snap yet, but the O-line looks significantly better than it has since you and I started covering the Vikings.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to see. It makes the quarterback conversation more fun, I would argue. And so whoever is in the pocket may be able to take a smoke break or two.
You think?
During games.
Yeah,
maybe.
Smoke break would be different, especially in this economy. You still smoking cigarettes? Don't do that. But no, I get what you're saying. Like, they're gonna have some room to run, and ultimately some time for whoever is playing quarterback in the future.
And give Aaron Jones some space too.
Yes. So there are a few other things that we didn't get a chance to get into in this first segment, but we're coming back. We're talking more Vikings. We're talking more about these additions that they've made, and what more may we see coming up in the coming days of free agency. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Continuing our Vikings conversation. Juju, so one thing that really stuck out to me, and you kind of made a point this morning to talk about it on the podcast, but the age. You really saw the Vikings do something, especially under this current regime, that they really haven't done. And it's invest, but also invest in guys who maybe have a little bit more football greatness behind them than in front of them. And so you look at some of the signings. Ryan Kelly, 31. He's been injured over the past couple seasons on and off. You signed Will Fries to this $88 million deal. He broke his tibia last year, and he missed most of the regular season. So he's coming off the injury. We know that they have a noted sports science staff. They brought Aaron Jones back, who's 30, on the other side of that, 30 number for the running back. That's always interesting. Javon Hargrave, he's over 30 as well. And so, but they've made these investments in these players, and they believe in them. And I think what we've seen too from the guys that they've brought in, I think I brought up Zadarius Smith when they brought him in. He had an injury history when they brought him in, and he played every game for the Vikings the season that he was in Minnesota. And we saw Aaron Jones have even though he was dealing with some injuries, he had probably the healthiest season that he's had since he's been
years.
in the league.
Yeah.
So I think that they feel that they have the necessary technology and sports science staff to make sure that even these guys who are, you might consider to be old Juju, they still got a lot of good football left in them, and they're healthy.
Well, TCO, I think, is known, too, as one of the pillars of orthopedics in the nation. And also, we have Mayo Clinic here, too. We have the best of the best when it comes to doctors. But I will say another thing that maybe people don't know about when you work in media is you get an injury report every week during the NFL season. And one thing that I noticed in particular my first year here, which was Kevin O'Connell's first year, they would send out these lists and the opposing team would have lengthy lists of injuries, and the Vikings would have one or two. I will say, it fluctuates, but for the most part, I would say injury-wise, the Vikings are fairly healthy, but I think it has something to do with the training staff. And so, because they've invested off the field in these trainers, and you always hear the guys also talk about how great they are too. And it's unprovoked too. No one's asking them to say anything. They always talk about, and they know them by name, which I feel like that's normal, but it's just something that we have seen where people travel from all over the country to come to TCO to see the doctors that are here. And so I think that that's something that they're confident in, and so they don't mind spending $88 million on a 5-year deal for a guy that's 31,
Absolutely.
It makes sense to them because they've done the investment off the field, so now they can do it on the field too. So I think that's a great point though, too. And also kind of running that back to what we talked about before, NFLPA survey, the Vikings are always at the top.
Absolutely.
In terms of how well they take care of these athletes. And that's hard too, right? Because it's anonymous basically from these teams to the NFLPA. And they get to say whatever they want. And the fact that the Vikings have been number one since the survey has come out says something about the team and says something about the guys and their longevity and wanting to be here too.
Real quick edit. Fry's got the $88 million deal. He's only 26.
Oh yeah, you're
but
right.
He's the one coming off the broken leg. So all the best to him and all that bag that he gets to spend.
Jonathan Allen's on a 3-year deal. So that
torn pec
says something too. He'll be 33 by the time that's over. But it's just it is something interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up because I guess you think about it, but you don't. I think sometimes viewers don't think about that.
Under this current regime, they're doing something different. All right, so we have to talk about the inevitable. So Sam Darnold, he's going to Seattle, 3-year, $100 million deal. Daniel Jones took a 1-year deal with Indianapolis to compete with Anthony Richardson for the starting quarterback job. I was like, okay, is that telling of where the Vikings are and the messaging that they have put out to maybe not the outside world, but internally of what they are going to do at the quarterback position? And then we hear this report from our guy Kevin Seifert, who we love at ESPN, but then he's talking about how the Vikings are at least having the internal conversations about the possibility of bringing one Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota. By the way, officially released by the Jets today. $49 million cap hit that they are taking to not have him quarterback their football team.
All for some headlines.
Yes. So we kicked around who we might want to see as a backup or a guy to compete with J.J. McCarthy next year. But to Kevin's point, there has been short of any type of public coronation that J.J. McCarthy is the guy from this Vikings brass, even going back to like the combine and when the season ended. And then, we heard from J.J. before on Rich Eisen earlier this year talking about how he understands the business of it all. So sounds like a guy who was not given any assurances, but then when these moves get made, we kind of think like, okay, maybe we do know where they're leaning. But then we get these reports about the next coming of Brett Favre in Minnesota, defecting from the Packers to the Jets to the Vikings, and now we got to talk about it. So what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are it's Aaron Rodgers, so you have to talk about it. You have to consider it, right? I feel like every team has to consider it. I don't think
Fix it, Jesus.
I know. It's one of those grabby things that also not crowning JJ McCarthy is a smart move.
Yeah.
Don't close your door to anything.
Yeah.
Right? This is the time of year where you don't have to do that. You don't have to make any decisions right now. JJ McCarthy doesn't have the option to go elsewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that if you haven't seen a guy play anything but a preseason game, no, you don't go crown him your starter, right? And when Aaron Rodgers is released from a team, even at this point in his career, you still have to consider him. And so I'm not feeding into all of it. A, because that's just my thoughts, and also B, because I don't want to.
Yeah, no, we don't.
And also, we've been talking about this, and all of us have brought up the point that I just don't see Aaron Rodgers and Kevin O'Connell working well together because Kevin is such a mentor to his quarterbacks, and Aaron Rodgers is very much like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yes. I have thoughts that the first time Kevin calls a play and Aaron Rodgers audibles it to like some back shoulder throw to Justin Jefferson, and Kevin O'Connell's just on the sideline like, but like he's smiling, but he's really like, he's really upset. And then him going on McAfee every week, and Kevin O'Connell's pretty close to the vest with all the things that he, you know, puts out there and allows to get out there in the atmosphere with what's going on in the building. I just don't see it working well. And then also with JJ McCarthy, you look at the moves that they've made and you see a team that has put together pieces so that the quarterback doesn't necessarily have to do a whole lot.
Right.
You don't have to put a whole lot on his shoulders.
Right.
That would seem to believe that it's JJ McCarthy moving forward, but then, you know,
you could put anybody back there at this point.
Exactly. Ready-made team for any quarterback. This is a quarterback's dream, so I guess you do have to think about the possibility of them bringing in a guy like Aaron Rodgers to kind of
But at that point, what's the point?
Exactly.
Just put JJ McCarthy in there.
Exactly. You got to see what you have. I understand it was cut short last year and his development was, you know, kind of halted a little bit just because of the injury, but you drafted this young guy to be the franchise quarterback. You traded up a spot to get him. You got to see what you have.
Yeah.
And this is the time where you can kind of put him in there, low pressure. You got all these weapons. You got this team around you that's going to play good defense, and you're going to be able to run the football. So I'm interested to see who they add coming up in the coming weeks. And this also kind of gets them in a position where they don't have to go so need-based in the draft.
Yeah.
They can go best player
don't need
available.
to do that anyway.
They got the comp pick. They got the comp pick, so they gained a third. So now they have 4 picks instead of 3. So I'm interested to see what they decide to do in that direction and the moves that they make up until the draft as well. But Aaron Rodgers, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
All right, we're going to stop talking about that before, you know, this thing just spontaneously combusts. And after the break, we're going to talk about the Timberwolves because they are doing well right now. We'll talk about the current streak that they're on and if they can keep it up moving forward. Welcome back. So just real quick, the Vikings did make it official with Javon Hargrave, and he is now in the fold. I know. I know. Oh my gosh. All right, but we're turning our attentions to basketball now, and the Timberwolves, they are streaking.
The Pups.
Yeah, 5 straight wins, and
That's all right.
It seems like Julius Randle might be the secret sauce. 5 straight wins with 5 straight games back for Julius Randle coming off that injury. And actually what's interesting is the Wolves have won the last 10 games with Julius Randle playing.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about.
And here's the thing.
Okay.
Everyone wanted to hate on Julius Randle.
Yeah.
I was not one of them.
Okay.
We could play the clips from our previous shows.
Yeah.
I always said everyone wants to hate on Julius Randle, but let's not act like he's not a huge part of all of the wins that they've had this year.
Trust the process.
Until he got injured. And then when he got injured, they lost a bunch of games for stupid reasons.
Yeah.
And he's back.
Yeah.
So those that didn't believe in him, it wasn't me. Just so you know, Julius, it wasn't me. I just wanted to put that out there.
Full disclosure, right?
Full disclosure.
Yeah, it wasn't Juju.
No.
Don't blame her. But I do think that Julius Randle does bring a level of efficiency to the team that they are missing. And, you know, his offensive rebounding has been exceptional.
Yeah.
He came 3 boards shy of a triple-double in the win over the Spurs. The 2 games before that, he came an assist shy and an assist shy in those 2 games from a triple-double.
Which is insane.
Yes, incredibly efficient basketball. And when Julius Randle went out with the injury at the end of January, he actually was leading the team in assists. So you don't think about those things, because I think when you see the ball in Julius's hands, it's like I'm looking to like put my head down, bully ball, get to the rack. But that's not necessarily always the truth. And he's brought a level of grit and again, efficiency. I remember Ant just kind of joking like, man, I saw Julius, I was like, man, you ripped. And he was just like, yeah, I've been putting in work. And it does feel like that. He hit the ground running, and now he's just allowed himself to insert himself back into the lineup and help their efforts to win these ball games. And funny enough, I was thinking about, okay, what are they going to do when Rudy comes back, when they have to insert him back?
Right.
He only goes 7 of 8 from the field.
Yeah.
Is that bad? No, it's not. It's not. And so you look at this game against the Spurs.
Everyone wants the dog on both of them.
I know they're the easiest people to, I guess, kind of be punching bags, if you will.
I think it has something to do with the personality too.
Yeah. Julius has come back and given a darn. And I think a lot of people kind of felt like he was a little bit aloof when he was out there on the floor, but I think he's come back with a renewed focus, and he just seems like his booty is on fire. Like, he's got some urgency to him.
I had a conversation with Nickeil Alexander-Walker on Sunday morning, and he was brutally honest about their journey this season. And he said, you know what? It has not been easy.
Yeah.
And we have had some really difficult conversations as a team in private. And I think this is him saying this. He said, I think that is what has kind of led us to playing the best basketball that we're playing right now, because we got through all of that and we're open and honest about it finally, and then we can move on. And I thought that was interesting, because I don't think a lot of times players are willing to open up and say this, that, and the other. Usually it's like, well, this happened, so we clicked, that kind of thing. But we're seeing the trade and the potential of the trade when it happened in real life now. So I think it's very interesting, and I think that we'll see how this game with the Nuggets goes.
Yeah, they go back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, it's
Game
kind of
7.
Remember? What is the immovable force meets immovable object meets unstoppable force?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Wolves defense and the Nuggets offense.
Oh, yeah.
So, should be a good one.
Yeah, I think some good signs, it was tough bringing Julius Randle in at the time that they did, because they had already done a few practices and scrimmages with Cat. And so you think about losing Cat as a 3-point shooter and his production offensively and his efficiency, really, because he can be like a catch and shoot guy.
Right.
And I think you look at it and you're like, I don't know. Like, okay, I think you're missing something. And look, when the Wolves have been bad this season, it's looked bad, like clanking shots, like it just – couldn't hit the side of a barn sometimes. And I think
the Wizards.
Yeah, it's looked bad at times, yes. But I think what's encouraging, the game against the Heat 2 games ago, 7 players in double figures.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yes, against the Spurs, the last win, 8 players in double figures. They shot 50% from the floor behind 3. Like, that is insane production. You're like, okay, you lose Cat, and it's like, oh no, that's okay. We'll get the production. It'll be a committee approach. It won't just come from one guy. And Ant's making threes at a clip that he's never done in his career as well. I think there are a lot of things that you're encouraged about. But these last couple games, against the Spurs, they're not all that great. Against the Heat, they're kind of figuring things out post Jimmy. But against the Nuggets, they're rolling. I mean, Nikola Jokic, 30, 20, 20, triple-doubles that he's putting up. Like, okay, hello, MVP 3 season. Like, what are we doing? He and Shea are just going to duke it out to the end of the year. But I think you do find there's about 15 games left of the season. I think you do find some encouragement from what you've seen from the Wolves that maybe they can avoid a play-in. The schedule the rest of the way is not
Not that
not
hard.
too difficult. You know, we're seeing some Utah in there.
Is it great to have a not so great schedule right before the postseason starts?
No, you get some confidence. It gives you confidence no matter what. You're like, yeah, we could beat anybody. We beat these guys. We can beat anybody. But I do want to see what it looks like against the Nuggets. Back at the scene of the crime.
This will be a telling matchup.
Yeah.
One of the more telling ones left in the regular season. Yeah. No, I'm back at the scene of the crime.
Yeah, it happened. I was in the building when they came back from 20 down to stun the Denver Nuggets in Game 7. Ooh, it's gonna be good.
That is crazy that's the last time that they played there.
Yeah, get your popcorn ready because that's what's happening tonight.
When this airs, yeah.
Yeah, we'll be. You know, have us on your iPad or your computer or your phone, and then you can have the Wolves on the TV. Okay, so. Once we finish, then you can turn us off. But, you know, keep us going, you know, because this has been fun. Haven't you been having fun? I've had fun.
I have fun. Yeah. I mean, that's everywhere I have fun, so.
Absolutely. Always fun to talk to you here every week on KARE 11 Sports Plus. That's Juju. I'm Reggie. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll holla at you soon.